Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. And today we've got a ridiculously thorough review of every single card, every single spotlight that is coming over the month of March. March is our anniversary month. It is the day that in 2023 we started Snap Takes. We have not missed a day since we began. This is also my son's birthday, my wedding anniversary, my stepmother's birthday. It's an amazing, wonderful month. We are super hyped for it, and we will have extra special huge things, including a Twitch front page. But all of that said, what you're here for is talking about Agamotto, talking about Eson, talking about Starbrand, Firehair, and Khonshu. Let's review all of these cards. But before we do, please hit that sub button so you don't miss out on any of our big celebrations and our huge giveaways. We are trying to hit 25,000 subs in 2025. We've given you more than 2 straight years, or almost 2 straight years at this point, of content every single day. We give you at least 3 brand new decks to try. If you want the most Marvel Snap content from the best players, make sure you are subbed here. We are also giving away an Agamotto. Our Agamotto Season Pass kicks off on tomorrow's video. All you have to do is sub, like, and then tomorrow I'm going to ask you to leave a comment. Someone who comments on tomorrow's video is going to win a Season Pass. We are also giving away our last Sam Wilson today. Jack Vegas, congratulations. Please reach out to me on one of the ways on the screen to claim that Sam Wilson. We are also, on Tuesday, announcing our first Agomotto winner. That'll be on Friday's Top 10 Decks video. All you have to do is watch that one, leave a comment in order to win Agomotto. What does Agamotto do? Well, Agamotto is a 510, we think. Agamotto was data mined as a 510, but the video, the developer video, studiously did not show what Agamotto's power was. So we're thinking Agamotto is still a 510. He has the game start ability of shuffle 4 Ancient Arcana into your deck. But first, I just want to talk about him being a 510. With Arrow now a 5-9, Agamotto and Black Panther are the only two positive 510s. Every other 510, and I think there's really only one in that other 510 is Red Skull. Every other one has a major negative. And so you can consider Claw a positive one if you want, but the negative is that it's across 2 lanes. This card is already ahead of the curve in terms of power. They really push season passes, and thus I assume Agamotto will be pushed as well, in that he's already a really great power for his cost. He comes with those 4 Ancient Arcana. The first is the Winds of Watum. That is a 2/0. Afflict an enemy card here with -5 power and move it right. Then banish this. All of his abilities have banished this. Banish basically means immediately disappear. So you could play 2. It's also going to say that they have 0 power. They don't have power. These are skills. These are a new card type, it seems. So they're not going to have powers. They cannot stay on the board. They banish themselves no matter what. So, okay. Afflicted enemy card -5 and move it to the right. That's a clog card. That's a huge, huge, huge negative amount. For disruption for 2 energy, that's incredible. You can look at Winds of Watum and go, that doesn't create board presence. And that's almost a reasonable argument. It does, assuming you played it on a spot your opponent has a card, right? It played as a 2/5. Yes, they can have Luke Cage, which will get rid of that -5, but like that's true of an awful lot of negative cards where you're sort of paying not very much for it. This fundamentally is just incredible stats, disruption, and a negative. I think that this one is absolutely incredible. This is the first of the Ancient Arcana. Next up, we have the Temporal Manipulation. That's 1 whatever. Give Agamotto +3 power, put him into your hand if he's not in play. Then banishes. This one is important. The first and foremost thing it does is its draw, right? If you wanted to draw a card in your deck and you're putting 4 cards in your deck, so you do want to like thin your deck where possible, you would play a card like Temporal Manipulation that will go grab you Agamotto. That +3 power is a nice bonus. Now you're getting a 10-13, which is just absurd power, right? Through the roof power. But please note, put him in your hand if he's not in play. If he's discarded, he's not in play. If he's destroyed, he's not in play. If you play him and he gets shonked, in a 7-turn game and you play Temporal Manipulation the next turn, you get him back, or at least that's the way it's worded right here. So this is a very, very powerful effect. This is probably the weakest of the Arcana, but at only 1 cost, that's pretty damn impressive. From there, we have my personal favorite, the Bolts of Balthak. The Bolts of Balthak are a 3 cost, and they are, on reveal next turn, you get +4 energy. And yes, that's only +1 energy because you're spending 3 to play this, but kind of so what? Having the extra energy to do in one turn has extra value, has tons of extra use. You can play this on turn 3, on turn 4, drop Galacta and Gwenpool. You can play this on turn 3, and on turn 4, drop Galacta and then another Arcana. I'm gonna keep saying Galacta, but like so many of the powerful things you can do with this Bolt card is get Galacta out and another card immediately, which is going to be an extra +3 power on that card, turning that into a 4/15, or playing out Gwenpool and something else being able to thin your hand, or getting out like an early Iron Man or an early Gore, or whatever the hell the case may be. I really honestly believe this one is going to sing. It reads like it could be a trap. And then when you think about it, it's like, oh no, this can do a lot of silly, silly things by enabling you to have that power early. You can play this and Agamotto on the same turn, right? Like you can play this, sorry, on turn 3, and then you get a ramp into Agamotto, but you have 8 energy, so you can still play another 3. You can play like an Agamotto and a Cosmo to protect him or whatever. There's just a million things you can do with the Bolts of Balthak that make it a very powerful and very cool card. And then finally, the one that's probably going to be the best, the other one's my favorite, this is likely to be the best. This is the Images of Icon. It costs 4. Transform your other cards here into copies of the highest power 1. So I have a feeling this is fairly often going to be a last turn play, right? You're going to do something like turn a bunch of cards into an Agamotto or something, but that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to play the Bolts of Balthak into Galacta on some other cards, and then I want to play, I want like 3 or 4 Galacta. If you've ever put Galacta in Bar Sinister, you recognize how insane extra Galactas are, extra Gwenpools are, extra like a million cards. You can get yourself a bunch of Shaws in a lane and then surfer that lane. There's a lot of very, very strong and crazy things you can do with Images of Icon, and I'm very hyped for this card. I think that all of these Arcana are great. The downside here is going to be the draw of the card. Agamotto's downside is going to be that it makes your combos harder to draw because it puts cards in your deck. I think I have the answer to that, but let's go through some more synergies before we talk about that. So the spells have no power and disappear immediately, so that means they're probably not working with Ravona. I don't think they're going to work with Lockjaw or anything like that. I think that's why they're using Banish here, so that they can avoid that trouble. That's why they're not giving it power. They're on reveal, so if the opponent figures out how to Cosmo their lane that you're going to play them in, that should stop them, but they should still immediately be banished, so they're not going to get stuck on the board. Banished isn't part of an on reveal, it's its own thing. So if you they have to Cosmo one like that turn exactly, right? If you are able to basically just don't play in the damn lane, they're gonna Cosmo, and you should be okay. They changed the wording on Gwenpool and Eliath to say character instead of card, and it is seemingly likely that that means neither Gwenpool or Eliath will work on these, which is fairly powerful. You're not going to be able to just Eliath and say, oops, you got these stuck. You're not going to be able to Gwenpool them and give power to things that don't get power. Okay. We'll see if any other cards they decide should work here too. They should still be played cards. They're still cards that reveal because they literally have on reveal on them. So cards like Hope Summers, Angela, and Thena should care about them, which gives us a powerful place to look. I think Hope Summers is the best of those, and Hope is the card we really want to play this with. They do add 4 cards to your deck that must be drawn, and that makes this a little clunky, right? Thanos' stones sort of Thanos' stones at least cycle themselves, and Arishem guarantees you like you have extra energy so you can do extra things. You don't have extra energy with this, so you can draw dead with this, which is worrisome. This could just replace Arrow in like a Scream shell or a tens shell because it is a 10 power thing. I'm not sure if it's going to do that, but with Winds of Watum, that makes some sense, particularly in the Scream versions. Bolts of Balthak and Images of Icon seem like they really, really love Galacta, as before mentioned. And overall, I think almost all of this really, really likes Thanos. And I want to keep board space, so that's the deck we're going to build. But first, I need to tell you about our friend Larmberdevs. Larmberdevs of the Snap on this Pod does a ton of Marvel Snap math. If you are aware of that time that Second Dinner gave us months and months of split bonus because it was found that they had made a mistake in the split rates before Mastery came out, Splitsmiths, Lauren Whatevs is the person who figured all of that out. I asked her to do the math to explain the value of the season pass card and why I personally consider Marvel Snap a subscription model game. I think that if you play Marvel Snap and you can remotely afford it, if you buy the season pass, you just get so exponentially much more out of it that it is fundamentally always worth it. So, this is the Lauren math. A Series 5 card is worth 6,000 tokens or 2.5 keys. If you just buy the Season Pass, you get 6,000 tokens or 2.5 keys worth of value. On top of that, you're going to get an extra 300 credits and 1,550 gold, assuming that you complete your weekend missions. You should always complete your weekend missions if you get the Season Pass, so obviously that works. As far as cosmetics go, you get 3 exclusive variants, 1 premium mystery variant, 2 mystery variants. So that is 6 variants right there. 3 avatars, 2 titles, 1 card back, cool, and 1 border. That is 5,800 gold worth of cosmetics. With cosmetics, the season pass ends up being worth $294. Without those, it's worth $122. The season pass as a whole costs $9.99. So at best, you're getting I don't know, $300 worth of value ish for your $10. And like, even if you only care about progression, as long as you play Marvel Snap, you're getting $122 worth of value. They will sell you $122 worth of stuff for your $10. That is either 19.5 times the value or 12.24 times the value. That's insane. There's no other value in the game that even approaches just buying the season pass every month. And I'm going to add one more thing to this that's not strictly math, but is still true. I know a absolute ton of players who buy the season pass every month and optimize. I have a video on the channel if you want to go look for it. It's basically how to get every card. The math on that has changed as they've changed their stuff, but the strategy still works. If you just buy the season pass and you optimize your spending, you will be either complete or within 10 cards of complete in Marvel Snap with time. That value is, again, completely absurd, completely through the roof. Buy the season pass if you can. Plus, this card seems amazing. This is the deck that I'm going to be starting with for Agamotto because this seems perfect to me. This seems like it's exactly where I want to be. We're sort of combining a couple different things. We want Thanos, right? Because Thanos draws cards. If we're drawing cards, that means drawing Agamotto spells hurts a little bit less. Right now, I think Joaquin Torres really wants to be in Thanos list because that turns each stone into a draw 2. It further turns the Mind Stone into basically a get every stone out of your deck. It turns the Time Stone into making Thanos a 4/10. All of that seems incredible, but eventually I'm going to run out of board space either way, right? Running out of that board space is why we're doing a Destroy package. We've got Carnage, Venom, and Lady Deathstrike and Killmonger as a way to get rid of those stones after I'm done with them. Those stones, while they're there, though, not only give me a strong Thanos, they give me, and cheap Thanos, they give me a cheap Mockingbird. Destroying them gives me a cheap death. Now, I might need extra energy. We have Hope Summers for that, along with the ability to make 2 cards cheaper, Mockingbird and Death. And we have Agamotto to say whichever of the big cards I get, we can A, get extra energy to play them, or B, turn an entire lane worth of stones into a bunch of Thanoses or Deaths or whatever else. I don't know. I feel like everything here works crazy well together. Even King Eitri says, I get a stone or a spell, and getting a stone or a spell out of the deck seems incredible. Yondu on Joaquin Torres. Yondu's the card I'm least sold on here, but I think everything else fundamentally sings together, and I'm really, really excited to see if this works. I.e., if you're looking at this and going, oh god, this does look good, get ready to dust off your Gorgons, because Gorgon will kill this list, but outside of that, this one looks real, real strong to me. I think Agamotto is going to bring Thanos back in a real way and in a really cool way. I'm very excited for this list. Go get Agamotto. All right, our first spotlight card, the spotlight card that comes out the same time as Agamotto, is Eson. Eson is a 6'10". He was originally data mined 6'9". He was originally data mined to 6'13" with a totally different broken ability, but he's a 6'10". After each turn, put a card from your hand that didn't start in your deck here. So you play him, and he plays a card from your hand that you created. It could have been created anywhere, right? It could have been created by Arishem. It could have been created by Mirage. It cannot be created by Cable because Cable doesn't create. He draws from your opponent's deck. But basically anything, your Nick Fury, so on and so forth, are going to create a card. And your worst case is he's a 6'10". 6'10" is good stats. He brings something out. He could pull a rock, at which point he's a 6'10" that pulled a 0, right? Most of the time, though, he's a 6'10" that's going to pull something of reasonable size, and thus he's going to play bigger than 6'10". That seems decent. It's also at the after each turn, so you want to get him out early. If you can get him to work twice, he can win a lane all by himself. All of this, for all the world, means he's an Arishem card to me. Arishem is perfectly happy to play him on turn 5 and say, okay, I just played 2 big cards. Great. He, outside of Arishem, will like Wave, Electro, Lunaso, Hope Summers, and Magic, i.e., any way to ramp him and get him that extra energy, that extra time to play him. Um, I don't think those are going to necessarily be worth it, but I know that our friend Husky Puppies likes decks like that, and he's near the top of the infant leaderboard, and he'll probably come up with something that seems decent. The best generators with him seem to be outside of Arishem, White Queen, well, that's why they buffed her to a 3/4, because now you can play White Queen, and then if you can get out Arishem, you're good to go. Sorry, if you can get out Eson, you're good to go. And Nick Fury, because Nick Fury makes 6s, and that puts 6s in your hand to pull. Agent Coulson makes some sense, as does Valentina, as just extra things that put a reasonable sized card into your hand. Iron Patriot seems to fit at least a bit here too, because you don't always win that lane. There's also a bit of synergy with Victoria Hand, but I don't think Victoria Hand wants this as a 6-drop. Maybe a Victoria Hand Wiccan can pull this off, but I tend to think I'd rather play a lot of little things at the end with Victoria Hand than a 6/9 that might or might not just be like, ooh, I grabbed a Kate Bishop arrow, you know? All right, so Eson comes with Beta Ray Bill and Wiccan. Beta Ray Bill is a Series 4 card. He's fine. He's just okay. Like that, the hammer is an 03 is good, but that you have to run a whole bunch of different stuff with him can be a problem. We also have Wiccan. A, this Wiccan variant is one of my favorite variants in all of Marvel Snap. But B, if you've been waiting a long time for Wiccan, you're kind of stuck opening this week. Wiccan is probably the single best individual card in Spotlights this month. That's not new. But I'm not sold on Eson or Beta Ray. However, if you really like Arishem, I think Eson goes up in value, and Beta Ray is at least a cool card. We will rank all of these cards in terms of like how much you should be desiring them later. But first, let's look at some decks. Kicking it off with Arish Eson. This is just a straight up Arishem Eson list. That's where I'll be starting. I built the normal Arishem list. I like Iron Patriot and Valentina as my extra cards. I like Quinjet as a way to get stuff out early. And then I threw Nick Fury in. And then because we might be clogging our hand with all this stuff, I threw Blob in. I think Galacta just wants to be in decks in general more often. Galacta on turn 3 is one of the best cards in the game. You can easily replace Shangra and Chances with Ares if you have it, and just go to town. This list does, in fact, seem very good, and Eson seems like he'd be very good in it. That's my basic logic here. If Also, Nick Fury can give you an Eson here, right? Like, if you don't draw your Eson, Nick Fury can happily draw something that's already in your deck. I don't know. This seems like a good place to start with the card, which means I'm not going to play it a ton outside of weekend missions. I am not a big Arishem fan. No offense to anyone who is. It just, I don't know. I don't find it especially interesting. If you enjoy Arishem, then again, I think Eson will be absolutely excellent. Next up, we have Wiccan deck. This is one of the best Wiccan decks right now. It is, in fact, the best Wiccan deck at High Infinite. This is our friend Gregor's Wick going. It's basically just a nice, simple, ongoing shell that runs Wiccan as a way to sort of cheat energy. It works really well. It's shockingly powerful. If you're interested in playing it, go for it. Wiccan has fallen out of the meta for the first time a little bit right as he finally comes into spotlights. We shall see if anything pushes him back to the top, but right now this is probably a tier 2 deck, and Wiccan's probably lower than he's been basically since his release. I fully do not expect that to continue. Bluntly, I don't expect that to continue. But for the time being, Wiccan is on the downswing. From there, we go to But Thor's. This is the probably best Thor's deck in Marvel Snap. It is ridiculously fun. It's about as good as a Thor's deck can be, which is to say it's a tier 3 deck. I don't think that Thor's are very good, but if you're going to play them, this is the place to go. This is a really cool shell from our friend Butt, one of the best players in all of Marvel Snap, without any question. And this deck does need Beta Ray Bill to function, and it's relatively cheap, so at least you have something to play Beta Ray Bill in if you decide to get that card. From there, we go on to Starbrand. Starbrand is absurd. The first, Starbrand for half the cost gives you the same power as Eson. He's a 3/10. Ongoing, your opponent has +3 power at each other location. So he's actually a 3/4, but you get enough value out of being able to turn him off and out of the 3/10 ability that I think he's still going to be absolutely insane. 10 is just a ton for a 3. We do a lot of work to get Sage to be a 3/10 at the end of the game. Starbrand comes down and is a 3/10 and has massive, massive synergies that we'll get to momentarily. Oh, I guess we'll get to them now, and then we'll talk about the spells. Excuse me. Starbrand goes with the 10s deck. He probably brings it back. I'm convinced he's the reason that Scar and Surtur got nerfed as hard as they did. So Scar, Cull, Crossbones, Arrow can replace, and he can either replace Surtur or just go in the deck with Surtur just fine. Hela runs Ross and might just take a 310 because if you're running Ross, you might as well. Sauron decks might are already good. They don't run Shuri anymore. They're like the Sauron Red Skull decks don't run Shuri anymore. But hey, maybe they start running Shuri again with this card as just an now I've got a 310. Why the hell not? As a 3, it's at least worth looking into for Surfer. I don't know if that works, but you've got to at least mess around with it. And it's just big enough that if you're running Enchantress, you consider it. If you're running Zero, you consider it. Like, if I'm running Enchantress in a Sarah deck, right? I'm reasonably happy to play this instead of Ghost because this is probably going to lose me priority because it's giving 3 to the other locations. And then I just Enchantress that lane later with my cheapened board. Like, I think that this is going to be an absolutely excellent card. So, Starbrand comes with Scar, which is really cool. I love when they do this. Eson may go with Wiccan, it may not, but Starbrand almost certainly goes at least in some shells with Scar, and thus them coming out together is great. Fastos is just an extra card here. It's a Series 4 card, but at least it has some decent decks. And if Starbrand goes in Surfer, it wouldn't shock me to see Fastos in those same decks. All right. I spoke to Skada, who's around a top 10 player right now, playing Surtur Scar decks, and I was like, so what do you do with Starbrand? How do you get him in the deck? And this is what he was like, all right, you just do this. You replace Arrow, the spot that was Arrow, a 510 with a 310. It's possible, not likely, but possible, you'll want to add something like Zero to the list for this. It's also possible that he just replaces Juggernaut or Cosmo or Armor or something like that. But having just a 310 instead of a 510 makes the deck probably still work, even if it's no longer quite the same deck as it was. This is an amazing place to start. So if you were playing this list and it's gone, you should probably be planning to go get Starbrand. From there, we have the current Hella list. So right after the change last Thursday when Scar was nerfed to a 712, nerf buffed to a 712, um, I was on Perry's stream and Perry and I were both like, oh my God, Hella, this is unique cost. And we took my Hella list and we built this exact list. And then we went on to Twitter and Ika had built the same list. And then we checked Cam Best and Cam Best had built the exact same list. We all independently were like, oh, this is the list. Then a bunch of people played it. This is now the top win rate deck in the game. I believe Regis Kilbin just made a video on it as the best deck right now. I know our friend Nick the Greek Geek used this to hit infinite. Hella's back. This is insane. This is one of the best things to do on ladder. Hella can always lose, right? I lost I was I played this through a gold conquest. I lost in the third round because in a big cube game, Hella was like, "What if I put every card that was discarded in one lane and then you just have 10 in every other lane?" All right, well, I guess I lose. A single other card going to a single other place would have won, and Hella was like, "No," which can happen. But this is so consistent at getting like 3-ish, 4-ish cards discarded. It's completely absurd. If you don't have Thunderbolt Ross, you can run Adam Warlock. If you don't have Scar and you want to play this, this is a cheap list. Go get Scar. It comes out this week. And then finally, this is round two's Fastos Surfer list. Fastos is just really solid in this list. I don't know what else to say about it. In Buff Surfer, he's better than Hope as a general rule. And he's just really excellent because the +2 power, if it hits Shaw, if it hits Brood, is incredible. And honestly, sometimes it's just like hitting an Ikea or something turns that from a card you don't really want to play late into a card, excuse me, into a card that's an absolutely amazing play. Hey, I'll be streaming hopefully tonight on Twitch at twitch.tv/PulseGlazer. Please stop by if you're willing. We will talk about the decks and the new cards and give and show off some of these other decks if you're interested. Next up, we have Firehair. Firehair comes out on 3/18. She's a 2/3. Circle that date. When one of your cards is destroyed, this uses that card's on reveal. We don't know if Cosmo stops this, but I pray that it does because this card is completely broken. There's just too much destroy, and there's too many ways that just sort of re-triggering on reveals are completely busted. I'm very worried about this card. Basically, any deck that wants Misery is going to run this. You can play this, and then if you Misery the Hood, you now have 3 demons. Like that alone is completely insane, but there's so many other things you can do with this. Um Both Mill and Victoria Hand absolutely love this. You should be able to mill out opponents in an absolutely absurdly short amount of time with this. If you're running like a Yondu, and just Yondu Hood Killmonger, and you've gotten rid of two of their cards, and you're just like going to town. I could see Destroy running this. I don't know if Destroy is going to run this. Destroy might just want like, hey, I just destroy things in another lane. Like, right, I play this in one lane, and then in another lane I drop my Deadpool and whatever, and then I Venom, and then anything that just happened to be in this lane also gets eaten. It seems very, very strong. This one I think is scary. I think this is the card that is likely to be broken this month and the best. It comes with two cards that it works great with. Nico Minoru has a destroy draw 2 spell that you're real happy to get a double of. Destroy draw 4 seems so I destroy draw 2 and then destroy Nico and then draw 2 more seems really good. Cassandra Nova seems really good. There's a Cassandra Nova Phoenix Force list that absolutely loves this, where you play Firehair, you play Cassandra Nova, you play Phoenix Force, then you play Misery on the Cassandra Nova. You're going to get a giant Firehair trigger and a giant Phoenix Force that's going to be Cassandra Nova, and you're just going to freaking town with this. Cassandra Nova, meanwhile, has numerous other powerful decks. She's a really good filler card, and if the meta becomes Arishem-ish with Eson, we'll be happy to have her coming out more. And then Nico just goes in a million decks, from Destroy to Bounce to Victoria Hand to everything else. She's just like one of the best utility cards in the game. This is an incredible week. This is the best, like, all three cards week by a lot. All right, so we have the Fire Mill list. This is our friend. I guess it's sort of a mix between Fudge and Crime Afoot. As for who created this and who plays it most, I was able to speak to Fudge about this, and Fudge is basically, I cut Baron Zemo for Fire. He's like, maybe we cut Iron Patriot, maybe we cut Cable, maybe we cut Baron Zemo. I'm not sure. Yeah, makes sense to me. But our basic goal here, if we go Yandu, Cable, Firehair, Misery, we've milled out their deck and drawn 2 cards from their deck in the process. That seems nuts to me. The opponent gladiators and then Firehair get that card's ability. If I so one of the best plays you can do with Iron Patriot is you can go Hood. Now you'll play Firehair onto. It used to just be like you'd Hood onto. You go Hood, then you Firehair in another location. Then you can drop Iron Patriot on Hood, and then you can play the demon in that lane in Misery, and you're just gonna have a handful of demons and Iron Patriot cards at that point, and that seems insane. Uh, you can Lady Deathstrike to get these extra powers and extra abilities later in the game. If you need to draw an extra card, you can Lady Deathstrike off that Killmonger, you can Lady Deathstrike off that Yondu, off that Cable, and then Firehair's just gonna be like, okay, I'll casually trigger those again. Just absurd stuff. Like genuinely freaking absurd stuff here. I think Firehair absolutely breaks this deck. This deck goes from a top 20-ish deck, like bottom of tier 1, to like top of tier 1, maybe S tier with this list, with Firehair. Currently, Derek has this ongoing list. It's a pixie list. We covered it in Friday's video. If you want more about it, Derek is number 2 on the Infinite Leaderboard, playing largely this list. There's another list we'll talk about soon that he's playing. So this is Derek's ongoing list. It's fantastic. It is a very good Cassandra Nova list. She's very hard to replace. Basically, anytime you're running Agent Venom Bass type stuff, you want Cassandra Nova, because if you play Cassandra Nova, then that's a 3/9, right? That 3/9 also gives negative power to the cards your opponent draws and plays, which ends up making her play like a 3/11, 3/12, 3/13, which is through the roof, crazy power. Amazing card in this type of shell. Then we have the bounce list. This is the one that I put in my review of the OTA video, and it's already a tier 1 deck according to Den on the Marvel Snap Zone stats. This list has felt incredibly good. Joaquin Torres being a 2/2 is amazing here. Nico is just insanely good with this kind of deck. Giving +4 to a card with Joaquin Torres, turning herself into a 1/8, making 2 copies of ideally Sage, but honestly kind of anything. Just awesome stuff from this deck. Like completely really cool. And Nico is not a requirement, but this is your chance to get into her, and then like you have access to all these different decks she goes in. Our final card of the month, well, our final spotlight card of the month is Khonshu. Khonshu is, when discarded, he returns to his hand in his next phase. On reveal, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 5. So Khonshu's a 6/5. If you play him, he's going to return a discarded card to play as a 6/5. However, if you discard him, he becomes Khonshu Waxing. When discarded, sorry. Resurrect a card you discarded in another location with its power set to 7. That seems pretty good. But what you really want to do is discard it twice, and then it loses the when discarded. It just becomes 6/12. On reveal, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 12. And that's insane. And it's pretty easy to figure out what we want to do with that. The trick is going to be you have to be able to discard him twice, but also discard at least one other card, and then you have to make sure that that one other card is big enough to win the game. This feels like a really good Lady Sif Moon Knight target, like an amazing Lady Sif Moon Knight target. It's possible that this really wants Corvus Glaive. I assume that I'm going to want Corvus Glaive as like just, okay, let's just get rid of some stuff. Gore and Iron Man love this because if you have a 12 power Gore, you've got like a 30 power card. If you've got a 12 power Iron Man, that's 24 power. Those are just wins. So I think we want Silver Samurai in these lists, at least potentially. This seems hard to use, but game winning. And this seems like it really fits in like an odds deck, which is what we're going to build when we get there. They also seem to think so because they're giving us Khonshu with the two cards I think work with it, both Corvus Glaive and Scorn. Corvus Glaive has another Hela list that we'll look at that we have exclusively. And Scorn has like 3 or 4 different discard lists at this point. It's got this new Khonshu list, it's got the Bullseye list, and it's got the classic discard. So that's enough to really make these excellent cards to go out of your way to get right now. Although Corvus going down to Series 4 is a little worse than the others. All right. This is my try for a Khonshu deck. I think we're going to need the first Ghost Rider. We'll talk more about what that is later. But it's a 2/6 that discards the lowest power card in your hand and then loses that much power. So ideally, you're playing that when Gore or Iron Man is the lowest power card in your deck, right? And then it's not losing any power. You just played a 2/6. That's why it's here. I think that's why it's necessary. Like it guarantees you the discard you want. Nico is here because I need to draw the damn Khonshu for this list to really work. So I'm running Nico because draw 2 seems good. I also like Nico to copy important cards like Last Ghost Rider or to get me an extra blade. That kind of thing seems very useful. Blade is a targeted discard. Fundamentally, you always know exactly what it's going to discard. You're happy to rediscard Scorn over and over again. You're aiming to hit Khonshu Tice, Gore, Iron Man. So this is what you're doing. It also gives you the last turn play of Blade into Blink, which is obviously very powerful. We talked about Last Ghost Rider. Gambit is a random discard. You don't really want to use Gambit in this list as a general rule, but like where you never ever want to hit Hela, if you hit Khonshu, you're like, all right, cool. So Gambit has that extra ability. It can also just be game winning sometimes, and thus Gambit's here. Moon Knight only has 2 targets, and well, 3, I guess, but you'll play Ghost Rider before Moon Knight, right? So it has 3 targets on the list. You're trying to hit Gore or Khonshu. Nice and simple. Corvus Glaive obviously can hit anything, but we do want that extra energy. We do want that extra ability to use this card. If with Corvus Glaive we can just sort of play Gore on 5 and probably work things out. It's possible, not likely, but possible. We're going to want Mystique in this list instead of Gambit at some point because then we can just play Gore and Mystique or Iron Man and Mystique and try and win that way. Lady Sif, again, the 6 drops are Gore and Khonshu, so that's why we're doing that. Iron Man is super cheap and really, really good here. And then Blink is here to get us a damn card we need. Because sometimes we'll get like all the discards, right? But then we'll not have Gore. And like Corvus Glaive, we can play Khonshu early, right? So we can Blink, we can play Khonshu, and then we can go get Gore too. I get with Blade, with Scorn, with Nico. And that seems very strong overall. I think this list is going to be really cool. Is it good? I don't know. Hell is insane right now, so I'm not sure. This is Denish's Hela. Denish has 2 Helas he's playing. This is his more standard version. He's played a million versions of this. He's in the top 10 of the Infinite Leaderboard right now. And this version of the list absolutely needs Corvus Glaive. There is Hela that doesn't run Corvus. We looked at it earlier this video already. This is the sort of crazy Denish version that he absolutely rocks with, but it's a Corvus requirement. So we have Corvus in 2 different lists at this point. So if you want to play them, you need Corvus Glaive. And then finally, I wanted to show Scorn in a different list because, again, Scorn is in that very first list. This is the Kochia Bullseye. Alexander Kochia is one of Marvel's biggest creators. He created this deck that's still really, really good and really close to meta, and Scorn is a must for it. So that's where we are. All right, finally, we have the first Ghost Rider. 2/6 on reveal, discard the lowest power card from your hand. Remove that card's power from this. And I'm not going to do anything extra special here. It goes with it goes with discard decks. In particular, it goes with Hela and Khonshu decks. So I went and found a Hela list that I thought this would be really good in. There's a Hela list that's been floating around before the Scar change. This was the highest win rate Hela in the game. It runs Iron Man and Gore, and thus you're able to say, "I chuck Iron Man and Gore." I would like a way to chuck Iron Man that's not Swordmaster, or I guess Silver Samurai does it too. But an extra way to do that is very powerful for the list. That's it. And so is just having a 2/6. This deck used to run Morbius, but like you would be like, I discard with Lady Sif, Swordmaster, and Hellcow, which is going to make Morbius a 6, right? And if you got lucky, you got Black Pack, and Morbius is an 8. I'd rather have Ghost Rider get the extra discard trigger, and then you have the slightly less power, but the more useful card. That's where this is. I think that first Ghost Rider is just for these decks. But he's going to be great in these decks. 6 is a lot for it too, as people are playing Lizard right now. All right. Oh, I put that in the wrong order. So Swarm Bullseye decks that are willing to mess with this potentially. It's probable Khonshu wants this and Hela wants this. And 2/6 remains a lot. Okay, so let's tier every card. So I very, very rarely put new cards in S tier. I'm also going to shout out our friend Docty, who is long gone for making Marvel Snap content, but I always think of Docty whenever I make a new card tier list. So I almost never put new cards into S tier, and I have 3 new cards into S tier, which should tell you something. Firehair, I think, is going to be one of the best cards in Marvel Snap. I think it's going to need to get a limit of like once or twice per turn, and until then, I think it's broken. Agamotto is going in S tier because I just want to go through our season pass cards recently. Sam Wilson is at worst an A tier card, probably S tier. Before Sam Wilson, we had Iron Patriot, an S tier card, Galacta, an S tier card, and before Galacta, we had Surtur, an S tier card, and before Surtur, we had a 1 month hiatus of Symbiote Spider-Man. Before that, it was Kate Bishop. They're clearly pushing season pass cards. Everything about Agamotto suggests that he's still going to be pushed and still be one of the best cards in the game. Wiccan, as of right now, is probably technically an A tier card, but he's been so good for so long, it's hard for me to imagine that he's not coming back. So I have Wiccan as a potential S tier card. Starbrand, I think a 310 is just S tier. And Scar, being in the best deck in the game and having the Scar Surtur deck still exist, makes Scar an S tier 2. Scorn is a solid buy. He has 2, potentially 3 great decks. I think the first Ghost Rider is great, and you don't have to buy it. You're going to get it for free from Voltage. And then I think Nico Minoru is a solid buy because she goes in 10 million decks. Corvus Glaive is for decks you like. If you want to play those decks, you should probably grab Corvus. Cassandra Nova is better than Corvus, but in the same tier. And Khonshu could be S tier, but it could be F tier, and I'm not sure because it's a totally new archetype. So I decided to split the difference and go B. I don't expect Eson to be required because Arishem doesn't require cards because it's Arishem. It can just generate its way out of anything. But it's fine. You have a deck to run it in, just like you have a deck to run Fastos in. So if it suits you. And then Not Without Buffs is Beta Ray Bill. All right, so what do I open for? So obviously you should absolutely target the highest tier stuff, which means Firehair, Agomotto, Wiccan, Starbrand, and Scar. That means that I would be looking to open the Firehair and Starbrand weeks. Again, I'd like to remind you that the season pass is the most important thing in the game to buy. It basically makes you collection complete over time while also providing insane value in the immediate term. Eson seems not very good outside of Arishem. Wiccan is a must buy, and Beta Ray Bill is the worst card of the month, which means that it's hard to not recommend opening this week for Wiccan, but outside of that, I think this is probably the worst week of the month. Starbrand is going to be in a lot of decks, even if not immediately. It will be in a lot of decks. Big numbers always are. And this is good with Scar, who it comes with. Scar is now in the tier 1 Hela list. I expect that list to be nerfed, but if you just want to immediately hit infinite, if it's not nerfed by then, you can get to infinite with this, I promise. And then finally, Fastos is fine for one version of Surfer. Firehair feels like a huge problem. Nico is always in a lot of decks, and Cassandra Nova is very, very good. Khonshu seems like a new deck and comes with cards he gets played with, which is very, very convenient, but it's unclear how consistent that deck is going to be, and both of the other cards have other very specific things they need, and Corvus is Series 4 not as good. So week one's value is Firehair because Firehair comes with two great cards. If you don't have any of these cards, getting Cassandra Nova, getting Nico is insanely good value. I think Firehair is insane. That's just a week to open. That's better than Starbrand, and Starbrand is great, but only if you really like big idiot decks. So if you want to play either Scar decks or you're interested in Sauron decks, then you're going to really want Starbrand, and again, you can just get Scar with it, so that's going to give you that Hela deck too. That's better than Khonshu week, and Khonshu comes with basically a full deck for Khonshu, more or less, which is pretty cool. If you have Gore, it's possible that that goes higher if you're more interested in that than the Scar stuff. But generally speaking, because Corvus is enough worse than the other stuff, I think that Starbrand goes ahead. And then the worst week is Eson week, but like Wiccan is arguably the best card. Wiccan and Scar are the top tier cards that are coming in spotlights. So it's a very, very complicated week. It's also worth remembering that Scar is going down to Series 4, though, in the series drops that happened the day of the card release. That's my order. Firehair week over Starbrand week over Khonshu over Eson week. Certain tiers of support on our Patreon come with honor. Thanks. I'm going to say thank you to a whole bunch of people, and then I'm going to wish you a good day. And tomorrow we'll be back with a full set of brand new decks for you. First, thank you to Ocularis, our patron of the month. This is your last time, Ocu. After this, it's going to be Shannon's month. Thank you to Abigail Gieson, Mandatory Burnout, Irregardless, Always Kind, LAB, Inc., I Am Frostman, Hota Navarrete, Thinking Poker, Primed Ryan of the Prime Mind Podcast, Ryan Burke, Ryan Wood, Caretix Lee, Prime Ryan of the Prime Mind app. It's getting late at night. Caretix Lee, Koirei Kazuchi, Archangel 3K, Black Dahlia, Pyrofroze, The Goat Seeker, Hallowed, Nightmare, Only Fox, Synth, what's up, Synth? Fat Nick, Dirty, Casual, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cables, Ginger Prime, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, The Bizza, Black Jeebus 23, Exorcias Kipichi, Jessica Gamble, Slush Death, The King of Bros, Bro, The Great Kazoo, Werewolf, Kevsey Hoda, Lunar Chris, Clam, Colonel Forbin, Rob Silverman, M. Holland, David G. Wingfield, Stephen, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B., Mr. Craig Sterry, Matt V., Ren Wrench, Corwin, John Q., and Jimmy McHugh, Gistout, 8th Sage, One Big Man, Milkman for Reals, Cactus Jack, BG, Quid Pro Joe, Snap Decisions Joe, Mod Supreme Models, The Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan 56, The Fuzzy Dunlop, Spectrumix, Woot, Absolute Shannon, Matt H, DJ, Mikey, Hijinks, No Flex, Nick the Greek Geek, Zodrex, the King of Canada, Denman Falcon, Fawthorn Newman, Jonesy, Two Ties, Lauren Whatevs, you heard from her earlier, the Pirate King Tucker, and of course Gunny T, where the T stands for. If you want the most reviews of these cards, make sure you're here. If you watched this long, this is your first video. A, hit that sub button. But B, every week a card comes out, we preview it with the updated meta, then we review it like 3 times during the course of the week to ensure that you have the most information for how to buy things. We'll make sure that you spend your tokens wisely as best we can, or your cash as wisely as the case may be. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow with, I've got like a ridiculous amount of new decks for the last day of the season, so make sure you don't miss tomorrow's video for that. Peace.